All right, let's dive into a massive challenge for pretty much any compliance team out there. How do you design metrics that actually prove your program is working? We're talking about moving beyond just ticking boxes and finding the stuff that truly drives improvement.
So let me ask you something. I want you to think about the metrics you track right now. Are they just showing that you did a thing, that an activity happened? Or are they telling a much deeper story? A story about effectiveness, about risk, and about real-world impact?
If you're starting to question your own metrics, well, you are definitely not alone. A whopping 70% of compliance professionals are actively moving away from that old check-the-box mindset. They're jumping into a more strategic, data-driven approach, and we're going to break down exactly how they're doing it.
So let's start with why this is such a huge deal right now. We're moving beyond box ticking because, frankly, meaningful measurement isn't just a nice-to-have anymore. It's become absolutely essential.
Look, the reality is that old approach is just not cutting it. Simply tracking things like how many people completed training isn't enough to prove your program is effective. And if you can't measure your impact, you can't prove it. And that, my friends, opens you up to some serious scrutiny. And who's demanding this proof? Well, pretty much everyone who matters. Regulators like the US Department of Justice are now asking point blank for the metrics you use to detect misconduct. Your board, your investors, they all want to see the data. And it's not just in the US. Authorities from the UK to Australia are asking the exact same tough questions.
Okay, so how do you know if a metric is actually valuable? How do you separate the insightful stuff from what we call vanity metrics? Well, it all comes down to a really simple but incredibly powerful filter. Let's call it the "so what" test.
For any metric you track, any single one, you have to ask yourself, so what? If this number goes up or if it goes down, what does that really mean? What specific action does it tell us to take? If there's no clear answer, if it doesn't lead to a real decision, you are almost certainly tracking a vanity metric. This right here shows the difference perfectly. On the left, a classic bad metric. 96% of employees completed compliance training. Okay, great. So what? It tells us an activity happened, but it tells us nothing about whether it actually worked. Now look at the right. A 15% drop in related incidents after the training. Now that is a story. That metric proves effectiveness. The source material just nails it with this quote. If a chosen metric doesn't reveal anything useful or prompt any change, it's not worth tracking. It's not just about collecting data. That data needs to be a call to action. If there's no action, it's just noise.
You'll find that all the best metrics share these key features. They have to be aligned with your biggest risks, and of course, they have to be actionable. That's the big one. If it doesn't point you toward a clear decision, it fails the so what test, period. They should also be directional, right? You want to see trends over time, not just a single isolated snapshot.
Okay, so we know what a good metric looks like, but how do we actually go about building a set of them? Let's walk through a simple 4-step blueprint that you can use.
This framework is your guide. First, you align every single metric to a key goal or a top risk. Second, you have to balance lagging indicators, stuff that shows past results, like how many incidents you had, with leading indicators, which help predict future issues, like what employees are saying in culture surveys. Third, focus. You can't track everything, so just focus on the high-impact stuff that really matters. And finally, evolve. Your business changes, risks change, so your metrics have to change with them.
So what does this look like in the real world? Let's check out a few examples of some really powerful metrics that truly matter.
Take issue resolution time. Look at this trend. The average time to resolve an issue is dropping from 45 days all the way down to 30 over 3 quarters. Now that's not just a number on a chart. That is proof that your process is getting more efficient, more responsive. That's a powerful story to tell your leadership. Or look at this. Where are your reports coming from? A healthy mix of sources like this, from hotlines to managers to audits, suggests that your employees trust multiple channels to speak up. Now just imagine if that hotline slice was 95% of the pie. That could be a huge red flag that people don't feel safe talking to their managers. See? It tells a story.
And hey, remember our bad metric example from before? Well, this is the solution. Training effectiveness doesn't just care about completion. It measures things like quiz scores, or even better, it looks for a drop in specific policy violations after you roll out a training module. It measures actual impact.
So this brings us to a really crucial point. Collecting all this great data is only half the battle. The real value, the real magic, comes when you use that data to drive meaningful change.
To do that, you have to put your metrics to work. Get them into leadership meetings, assign a clear owner for each one, use dashboards to make those trends pop. But those last 2 points are where the rubber meets the road. When a metric moves, you have to dig in and find the root cause. And then you have to act on what you find. That's how you create that cycle of constant improvement.
And when you do this right, the business benefits are crystal clear. 74% of executives say that when compliance is measured in a meaningful way, it actually enhances the business. It stops being a cost center and starts being a real strategic partner.
You know, it really all boils down to this classic management saying. It's so simple, but so true. When you choose your compliance metrics with care, you're not just tracking data, you're defining what gets managed, what gets improved, and ultimately, what success actually looks like for your program.
So I'll leave you with this thought. Your metrics are already telling you a story. The real question is, are you listening? And maybe even more important, what are they telling you to do next?